My name is Carolyn Joy Burton Bounds, and I am the daughter of Joy Owen Burton, the son of Opal Cleo Ross Burton and Robert O. Burton. The pictures displayed here will be of the family of my paternal grandmother, Opal Cleo Ross. Primarily her children, her grandchildren, perhaps some of the great-grandchildren. The first photo is a picture taken at Christmas in 1958 in Hallsville, Illinois, at the home of Robert Murray Burton, and Catherine Burton at Christmas time. This is a good picture of my grandmother Opal sitting among her sons. On the front row from left to right is Charles, the oldest, then my dad, the second oldest son, and then my grandma, Opal, and then her third son, Robert Murray Burton. He always went by Murray. That's at his home. In the background on the wall, you can see a charcoal sketch he had made of Christ, because he was the one that was the most artistic. In the back row is my uncle, Aubrey Ross Burton, named after Aubrey Ross, my grandmother's brother. And then the youngest child was Lowell David Burton. His nickname given by his brothers was Tony, because he was so taken by a certain baseball player when he was little named Tony, and I don't know which Tony, which baseball player. But those are her 5 sons. And her first child was a girl, and her name was Carmen Maxine Burton Keinert. She married Dale Keinert. But this is just her and the boys, because Maxine wasn't there for Christmas that year. Maxine and her family. The next picture, number 2, is at the same location, same time. However, it shows not only all the boys, they're not in birth order here. The youngest is in the middle on the front row. But the 2 oldest are on the left side, Charles and his wife. This one shows wives, and that's why I wanted to include it. Charles, or Charlie, as we called him, my uncle, and my Aunt Marjorie Jones, she was Marjorie Jones Burton. Then my dad, Joy, and my mother, Laura. She was Laura Levy Burton. And then my Uncle Tony and his wife, Lowell David, and his wife, Alberta Benefield Burton. And then my Uncle Murray, and then his wife, Catherine Levy Burton. She was a younger sister to my mother, Laura. Then, so their children and I and my sister were double first cousins. Then last is my Uncle Aubrey and his wife, Betty. And Betty was, our family was neighbors. My mother's family was neighbors to her grandparents, and so I knew them and her for a long, long time. Their last names were Fruit, Mr. and Miss Fruit. Anyway, this is set there in Hallsville at Christmas time of 1958. The third picture is a picture of my grandmother, Opal Cleo Ross Burton's only daughter and firstborn child. She was born in December of 1920. And she was a very attractive, very beautiful woman, very talented. She married Dale Keinert from Mount Pulaski. I think she was about, I don't know, probably around 20, maybe not quite 20 when they married. And they always lived away from Clinton, our hometown, and they always lived away from us. But they came to visit usually once a year, and sometimes we would also go visit them. After World War II, her husband was employed by Sears and Roebuck, and so Sears and he was in management, and they would move him from town to city to city. They ended up, they were in Beloit, Wisconsin. They were somewhere in Michigan. They were they were in Springfield when I was very small. And they ended up in Rockford, Illinois, where their children attended school and graduated. They are in the picture. Their son, Martin Dale Keinert, he was born in 1946. and then Dale and Uncle Dale, and then Christina was their daughter, and I don't know how much younger than she is, how much younger than her brother she is, but she's probably maybe 4 years. She was a cute little blonde. And then my Aunt Maxine, the daughter of Opal Ross and Robert Burton. The fourth picture is a picture of my grandmother Burton with us at Easter time at our house in Clinton, Illinois in 1955. She was always, I thought, a very pretty woman, and she was always dressed attractively. You can see here she's got her nice suit on and her high heel pumps, and Linda and I used to love to play in her high heels. She had such tiny feet, and it was just wonderful to us that our feet actually fit into her shoes. We're pictured, Linda and I. Linda's on the left, and in 1955, Linda would have been, 6 years old or so, and I was 10 years old, and that's me on the right. Oh, by the way, she bought me that skirt, I think, for my birthday. I had a spring birthday in May, and I was so proud of that sort of rock and roll skirt. The next picture is a picture of my grandmother, Opal Ross Burton. I'm in front of her on a tricycle, and she is holding my baby sister, Linda Burton, and it was taken in our backyard on Clinton Street in Clinton, probably around 1950. Linda was born in 49, so she's probably somewhere close to a year old there or so. And that was during one of Granny's visits to Clinton. She often came on the weekends from Peoria to see us when we were little, and we were always excited. The fifth picture is my grandmother. It's a good shot of her sitting in the chair in my parents' home on South Clinton Street in Clinton, and that was taken in December or November of 1957. The sixth picture is another family get-together at Christmas. This one was held at Charlie and Margie's house on South Clinton Street. They lived across the street from us. And this is in their living room. And you can see here on the left is my mother, Laura Burton, and another picture of my grandmother, Opal Cleo Ross Burton, and my Aunt Carmen Maxine Burton Keinert. And the little girl in the front there with her head, the back of her head to the viewer, is Deborah Catherine Burton, the daughter of Murray and Catherine Burton. The pictures that I'm about to discuss now are military pictures. They're pictures of all of my uncles, my grandmother Opal Cleo Ross Burton's sons, her 5 sons. And the first picture is a picture of the 2 oldest boys, Charles Orrin Burton and Joy Owen Burton. And these had to be in the early or mid-40s. No, probably 1942 or 3, probably 43, maybe 44. But anyway, Charlie on the left is the blonde. My grandmother had 3 very blonde children and 3 very dark-headed children. The one on the left, Charlie, is the blonde, and he was in the United States Army, and he was aboard a ship. I believe he was a cook in the Pacific Ocean. I know at one point he was in the Philippines, and I think he was also at one time at the end of the war in Japan. On the right is my father, Joy Owen Burton. He was in the United States Army to begin with. I think he enlisted in probably 1943, in the summer of 43, maybe June. And he first was in the Railroad Battalion. He was stationed in the United States in San Antonio, Texas, in 1944, I know. He was also in New Orleans and he just did not like the railroad battalion. So he asked to be transferred to the U.S. Army Air Corps, and he was allowed to transfer. I think he trained in Florida. I'm pretty sure he was in Massachusetts. He embarked from the ship that took him to Europe, to London, left Newport News, Virginia in 1944. And he was in London, where he was part of the, I think, 8th Air Force. I don't know a lot about this, but he was, I think, a gunner, a waist gunner. He was a small man, so I think he probably fit well in that capacity in that plane. He got in all of his missions and survived them, obviously, and it was a point system, and so he got his 30-some points and was able to return to the United States safely in 1945. He got home, I believe, May 3rd, and so then he went back to work I was born shortly after, and then he went back to work for the Illinois Central Railroad. The next picture, number 8, is a picture of my Uncle Murray, Robert Murray Burton, the son of Opal Cleo Ross Burton and Robert Burton. He was in the military. I don't know the exact years. He was there for World War II's occupation. I don't know if he got there in 45, maybe late 45, but he was there and was involved in the occupational forces, with the occupational forces of Austria and Germany. And one of my uncles told me that he even was there at Hitler's nest or home in the mountains or whatever it was when all of that was uncovered. I know that he was traumatized by a lot of things he saw, especially that had happened to children and civilians. And he ended up, as a result of that experience, a disabled veteran for the rest of his life. And he lived always with his wife, Catherine, and their children. And he loved art. He loved his family. And he was a kind, tender-hearted, quiet person. The next picture, number 9, is a picture of my Uncle Aubrey Ross Burton, Opal's son. And this is a picture of him in Korea. He was in Korea in the 50s. I know he was in Korea when I was in the first grade, because he would write home letters and he would indicate that guerrillas were attacking the trains. He was in the railroad battalion there. And, of course, being a little 6-year-old, the only kind of guerrilla I knew was a hairy animal. So I used to worry at night when I was in bed about him being attacked. I could envision a gorilla on the engine and all that sort of thing threatening him. But anyway, he was there, and I remember him coming home on leave once. But he got out in the early 50s. And, of course, he, too, like the other boys, was fortunate enough to survive. He came home and soon thereafter married his wife, Betty Burton, Marla's dad. Picture number 10 is Lowell David, known as Tony Burton, the daughter of Opal Cleo Ross Burton and Robert Burton, the son, rather, of them. He was in the United States Navy, and I just always thought if I could have military service, I would join the Navy because I really like the naval uniforms. And this is a picture of him in his uniform, and I just thought it was just fantastic. This picture was taken in the summer of 1950 when he was home on leave, I guess, or he mailed this picture to my parents on South Clinton Street. But anyway, he was the youngest. By the time he came along, we were not directly involved in conflict, in any war of any kind, and so he spent his naval years stationed at Pensacola, Florida. And in fact, he hitchhiked from Pensacola to marry his wife, Alberta Benefield, while he was while he was in the Navy, and then after that, he hitchhiked to Dallas, where she was working for State Farm. And after that, after he was out of the service, they came home to Clinton and raised their family there. He took an apprenticeship with the Illinois Central to be an electrician. He fulfilled that commitment and then worked for the IC a while, and I think he spent 10 years. And then he went out and worked construction. He was a union electrician. Okay, the next set of pictures are of my parents. Laura Levy, and the wife of Joy Owen Burton. I was named for my dad, Carol and Joy Burton, and I was born May 7th, 1945. In fact, my mother told me that when she was in the hospital having me, it was announced that the war had ended in Europe. And so we just had to finish off Japan, I guess, and then the United States would be at peace. But anyway, she was excited. They were to have the war over and everybody home safely in our family, and to have her first child. Later on, 4 years later, she had her second happiness, another daughter. In fact, my dad always wanted daughters, and both of us, and my mother always thought it was because of the war experience that he did not want sons that would have to go to war. I don't know whether that was true or not, but he liked his girls. This is the first picture is of my parents. It is what Mom always called their wedding pictures. They were married March 19th, 1944, when Daddy was home on leave. My mother was determined to finish high school, and she agreed to marry my dad. They married in March, and she graduated in May, and then she went east to be with him. They were in Massachusetts, and then they were in Newport News when he was shipped to Europe with the Army Air Corps. Her dress she has on, I can remember seeing it in the cedar chest. I don't know whatever became of it. Also, part of his uniform was there. But I don't know what happened to this clothing, but that was a picture. I'm sure it was made by Macy, the Clinton, Illinois photographer that made their generation's photos. He was on East Main Street, and he also made our generation's photos, high school graduation and so forth. The next picture is simply a picture of my dad's Army Air Corps, and he kept in touch with a lot of these guys. We would get letters, and some of them came to visit when I was a very small child, and then they began to lose contact. I know that we always received a Christmas card and short note from the Doswell family, and I think Doswell, as they always called him, he was either the navigator or the pilot, but I know my dad thought a lot of him. And some of these guys were from New Jersey and New York and Texas, I remember him saying. And you can see they were primarily kids, except for a couple of them, maybe that were the ranking officers. My dad is on the front row, and he is the last one on the right. Oh, and his name's Joy O. Burton. The next picture is a picture of me and my mother, Laura Levy Burton, and she took me to the studio that day up at the local hotel where all the out-of-town photographers came to make photos of everybody in Clinton throughout the years. And she said that I cried and would not sit for the picture unless she would sit with me. This is a good picture of her young, and I think she's very attractive. When my dad found out she was going to have me, I remember she's saying that he said in a letter back home, first of all, he nearly fell off his bunk, and second of all, he hoped that I would have teeth, that I would be a girl, and that I would have her teeth. And she did have beautiful teeth, as this shows, which I ended up not having. But anyway, this is my favorite picture of the two of us. And this must have been taken in about 1947 or 8 before my sister was born, Linda, in 1949. The next picture is simply a picture of my mother and dad. It was taken that Easter, my mother and dad, Laura and Joy Burton. It was taken there in our backyard in 1955 at Easter. That looks like a 1950s picture. Mom with her suit and her heels, and Daddy with his jacket, dress pants, and a starched white shirt. The next picture is a picture of my parents, Joy and Laura Burton, and that was taken in Illinois at a state park. And I can't think of it. My husband, Walter, took the picture, and it had to be taken around 1970 would be my guess. We'd all gone there for the weekend. There's the huge Laredo Taft statue of Black Hawk that stands over the Rock River, and I don't know the exact name of the park, but it's all still there. And one of my favorite statues and my favorite Illinois sculptor. And we had a nice time there viewing that, and it was cold that day, as you can tell from the picture, but I always thought that was a good picture of him. The next picture is a picture of my dad, and it may have been his last day of work, I'm not sure, but it was in the last years or months. My husband, Walter, took it. He was employed by the Illinois Central Railroad for at least 42 years, maybe longer. Between my dad, my Uncle Aubrey, my Uncle Charlie, and my Grandpa Burton, there were hundreds of years of service to the Illinois Central Railroad. And it was the prime employer in Clinton, Illinois. 8 out of 10 people on the street where I grew up, on most streets in Clinton, were employed in one form or another by the Illinois Central, either at the shops across town, repairing and the engines and so forth, or in the offices, or in engine service, or whatever, maintenance. Daddy was a locomotive engineer. He worked for the railroad from the time he was about 15 or 16 years old, starting in the summers on the bridge gang, paint gangs, and then ultimately he hired out. I'm not sure which years. It had to be in the 40s. He worked the railroad and then went to high school during the day, and then his senior year he left for the Army, World War II. When he returned, he fired steam-powered engines, and then ultimately in the 50s, I want to think I was probably in about 5th to 7th grade, they converted to diesel, and he was also promoted to engineer. And that's what he did. And this is a picture taken in not the Clinton yards, the North yards, but in the Decatur yards, where in his latter years he worked a switch engine in Decatur, Illinois. And he and Mom had moved there for a few years before they moved to Texas, where he died in 1989. This is a really good, typical picture of him. The next picture is of my sister Linda Diane Burton Averett and her husband Robert L. Averett. He was born in Wichita Falls, Texas, and of course she was born in Clinton. And they are posing here with their favorite dog of all times, Miss Molly, the Dalmatian. And this was probably taken, in the 1990s. I think it was 1992. And that's a good picture of both of them. Now, the next few pictures are going to be pictures of my family. Carolyn Joy Burton Bounds. I'm the granddaughter of Opal Cleo Ross and the daughter of, obviously, Joy Burton. And I am married to Walter Bounds from Center, Texas. I met him in Ottawa, Illinois, where we both came to be first-year teachers. He chemistry and I English. And that was in 1967, the fall of 67. We worked there until 1971, I believe, at which time we moved to his hometown, Center, Texas. And there we lived. I taught. He ran his family's insurance agency. His father passed away and had begun that business, and he took it up and grew it and was very successful as an agent and also a risk manager. I taught school. I taught English in Tenaha, Texas for 4 years, and then I moved in my teaching career to Center, and I think I served Center 28 years. But anyway, I retired from teaching in 2002. I worked part-time after that until 2005. This is a picture of us, and I think it's a good one. We were fortunate enough to have 2 daughters, and in pictures, the order the pictures came in is our second daughter first. And her name is Laura. She was named for my mother and Buster's sister. Her name is Laura Lee Bounds Lesky. She was born in 1976, and she married Michael Harris Lesky, and there he is pictured in this picture, and they have 2 darling little girls. The oldest one is in between them. They're standing, and her name is Catherine Elizabeth Lesky, and she was born in 2009. And then their baby girl is sitting on her daddy's lap. Her name is Emma Allison, named for her Aunt Allison, Laura's sister, Emma Allison Lesky, and she was born in 2011. And so this is at their home on their front lawn. The next picture is from a Christmas card that our older daughter, Allison Joy Bounds, named for my dad, the Joy part. She is Allison Joy Bounds Skull. She was born in 1974, and she married Terry Skull in 1997, and they have 3 wonderful little daughters too. The oldest one is on the right, and her name is Caroline Clay, and she was born in 2002. And in the middle is Sarah Estelle, and she was born in 2004. And on the left side, by her mommy, is Laura, named for her Aunt Laura and her great-grandmother, Laura Ann Skull. And Laura Ann was born in 2007. So this is our little Skull family, the family of our older daughter. They live here in Center, Texas. The other daughter, Laura, from the previous picture, she and her husband live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The suburb is called Mequon, Wisconsin. I had some miscellaneous pictures I just thought I would share from the family of Opal Ross Burton. And the first one is, I did have this one of Aubrey Ross Burton, and there will be more pictures coming, as I said, from his daughter pictured here, Marla. This was taken in 1964, and it's Aubrey, his wife Betty, Marla's mama, and their daughter, Marla Gale Burton. And she was just a little girl there. The next picture is a picture of, always thought was cute, of Lowell David Burton. He's at my Grandpa Burton's. My grandparents, Opal and Robert Burton, divorced in 1945. March of 1945. I was born in May of 1945. So right before I was born, and I think they'd been married 25 or more years, and their sons were overseas, the older ones, and Tony was still at home, and he first went with Granny Burton to Peoria, where she ended up working the rest of her life till she retired and came back to Clinton. And then he also stayed at our house with my mom and dad and me when I was a baby. And then he also ended up, I know, at high school graduation, and before that, he was living with Grandpa Burton and his second wife, Tony's stepmother, Olga Burton. But anyway, this is a picture of Tony and me. And Tony was about 13 years old here, and I must have been about 2. And we were at Grandpa Burton's garden site, I believe Tony told me. And he was a cute little boy, and I was a pretty cute, also, I think, little baby with that big old hat. The next picture is of Tony and Granny Burton. And I feel like he had just gotten out of the Navy or he was home on leave. I'm not sure. He didn't have a uniform on here, but that doesn't mean, I don't know whether that would be significant or not in the timing. But it was in the early 1950s, and I think this is a really good picture of both of them, and it was taken in our backyard. I believe I see a lilac bush. The next picture is of Tony's children. And the firstborn, her name was Renee. And then she's on the left side of the picture. And then in the middle, I think, is their third daughter. I believe it's Lori. And on the right, I believe it is Tony Denise, which everybody called Sis and still does. And then in the foreground there is their little boy at that time, in 1978, named Eric David Burton. I assume after his dad, Lowell David Burton. But anyway, I thought that was a good picture of them. I'm pleased to report that in June this year, 2014, we all got together in Clinton and had a reunion and had a really nice time. And we do keep in contact. We're a big family, but we still remember where we all came from. And I think all of us have a very positive view of our grandmother Burton, and the stories she would tell us and the things she did for her children during hard times, and the way she treated us as grandchildren. And we all loved her dearly. And many of the older generation is gone. I think my generation now, born in the 40s, is the oldest generation. And we think of them often and still miss them terribly. But we have many good times to remember, and hopefully many good times ahead with our family. Many good times yet to come with the future generations.